This is the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast. I'm Dalton Gray.
And I'm Ryan Humphreys.
Broadcasting from our hometown of Fairbanks, Alaska. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Well, yeah, great to be here.
We have returned.
We are back.
We're back. I'm back from a brown bear hunt on the Alaska coast with my father-in-law, also Moe's dad, and a good friend of ours. We were out for a few weeks, and we have returned successful, intact, no damage from bears, and much damage done to bears.
Yep.
So we've got some stories to catch up on today.
I was just the guy at home getting texted pictures from various hunting trips that people I know have been on, including yourself, thinking about how easy it would be to throw a trip together.
Mm-hmm. Very.
And then my wife reminded me that there's a baby due.
Just a baby?
Yeah, just a baby. And she doesn't want me to leave her with said baby.
Oh.
Like, 2 weeks after it's born. She's born.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't say it's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congratulations prematurely anyway.
Well, thank you for the premature congratulations.
Yeah, you're welcome. By the time this comes out, hopefully she's already had the baby.
Yeah, should be. The baby should be out by the time this comes out, but maybe not. It's
if it hasn't,
close enough.
If it hasn't happened yet, then maybe it's time to start going on marathon runs and do some powerlifting.
Yeah.
We'll have to get her in our gym.
Your gym?
Yeah, our at-home gym.
Oh yeah, because we make so much money from the podcast.
That's not where I was going with that.
No.
No, this is
Is this the little treadmill that's about this long that you guys have propped up by your kitchen table over there?
None of this you guys talk. That's my wife's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I still have not put my body weight on that thing.
The at-home gym you're talking about?
It's the moving sidewalk of the living room.
Okay. We actually have a full-size treadmill.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Where did you hawk that thing from?
I think it came from the dump.
Nice.
It's a nice one, too. Yeah.
You get a lot of good stuff at the rehoming center.
Right. The reuse station.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The mall.
The redneck yard sale. Which we had one of those at bear camp.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Mm-hmm. Fishing buoys, milk crates, like intact milk crates.
Nice.
Yeah. Beautiful stuff. Made great chairs.
I've heard those can be hard to find stateside. They're all over up here. You just walk through the woods, trip right over one.
Yeah. Literally found them washed up on the beach.
Yep.
Buried in grass and chunks of fishing net, from commercial fishing boats.
I found one when I was sheep hunting.
A milk crate?
No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, what were they doing with a milk crate up there?
I don't know. What were the bears doing with a milk crate?
Well, these were commercial fishing boats that the tide washes in all the stuff.
I'm tired. I mentioned that before this, and I could feel that cortisol spike goofiness coming on, and I decided I wasn't going to go that route, but it's way too late.
Now we're there.
Well,
anyway, anything new worth talking about? Oh yeah, the Ambler Road is going on.
Yeah.
I almost forgot about that actually. That's making the news. So be sure, if you don't live in Alaska, be sure to get out there and put out your public comment.
Or just keep it to yourself, because we don't care.
Yeah, we've talked about the Ambler Road a few times, and there's some people up here that think that, the villages of the area should be able to decide. And
the village of the area wants it.
It does it really?
Yes.
Is there just one?
Unless that has changed since the last time I looked at it.
Which village is it?
Ambler.
Oh, there's an actual Ambler village?
Yeah. That's why it's called the Ambler Road.
I thought there was another one that was
there might be another one
be directly affected by it.
There might be.
Supposedly.
I think so. Oh, yeah, but I mean, they want the jobs. and the money that was going to bring into their community.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a huge amount of money for locals.
Sure. Yeah, being able to truck in supplies and just fuel. Just if they could, just
fuel.
If they could truck in fuel.
And even if the road isn't public access, they would have access.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, there would have to be. Yeah, there's all kinds of stink up in the air, and of course we say that it's mostly protests from folks that live out of state. That's just a little bit of sarcasm. There is a lot of that, but there's also a lot of resistance in state and people that they go both ways with their opinion on it. And at the end of the day, it's not really in our control to say whether or not it's actually going to happen. So you make the best of it. We've already talked about, in an ideal world, I wish we didn't have to, but if that's the best way to enrich the minerals and the natural resources that we need to take advantage of in our country from a national standpoint, then I guess we have to do it. But it is kind of a bummer that it has to happen there if that's what ends up happening.
Yeah. It doesn't. It bothers me even less than it used to that it has to happen where it's happening.
Yeah. Mostly
because a point of thought that I hadn't really had on it before was, and this is, and I get why you wouldn't like this, why people wouldn't like this, but is that it will, and inevitably the road most likely will be open to the public and hunters and everything.
I don't doubt that at all.
And I'm sure there'll be some kind of corridor or something, or not, maybe not. I mean, who knows?
I think it should be.
I would agree. I think there should be something, even if it's a mile.
Yeah.
Something to keep the crazies from shooting everything off the side of the road. Not that you can shoot anything there right now anyway.
The rifle. Yeah.
But I think that from the perspective, even if it was just a road for the village, had anything to do with the mine or anything, and obviously same people would be against it for the same reasons for the most part. It would open up access to people who just would not have it otherwise. It does.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, so those of us who can afford, I say those of us, I'm not even really in that group unless I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Who can afford to pay somebody to fly us out there.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'm not really in that group. I would have to pinch my pennies all year long, at least.
Yeah.
If not, and then take hunting trips in the years before that weren't as extravagant to go do something, get flown out for something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're talking like several $1,000s. Just to go on a hunt. Somewhere that remote.
Right. Just to get flown.
Yeah.
Which is what it is right now. Yeah. And so you take that and you open it more to the general Alaskan. It's far enough that a lot of your lightweights just aren't going to make it up there. Yeah. A lot of the problem people disappear with road distance and lack of cell service.
Yeah. Well, it's only a matter of time before they have cell service all the way up to
but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It just, the further you go, the harder the road is, the fewer people there are.
Exactly. And it's far enough out of civilization, but
I understand it won't be wild anymore and everything
just to play devil's advocate, though, you look at how, if we're using the word quote unquote wild or difficult to access, there are hundreds and hundreds of non-residents that come up here, rent a vehicle, and drive all the way up to Prudhoe and back doing road hunts for caribou.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
That's a very small number.
Yeah, but for us, on one road in that specific corridor of the road, I mean, during prime caribou season in the fall, there are no shortage of pickups parked on the side of the road. So you're adding
potentially 200 miles to that.
Yeah.
That is going to, it's not going to make more people come.
It might. It might.
Maybe a little bit, but if you're going to, I don't think you're going to say, oh, Ambler Road's open to hunt, I'm going to come now. I never would have come before.
Yeah. I think there will be some of that. I mean, certainly, I will admit. I will admit, when the day comes that it opens to the public,
you'll be the first one on it.
I will be early on that road trip, just because I want to just go see it. Yeah. And then I'm going to get tired of it if I keep driving it a lot for some reason. But yeah, it will be cool to go see all that. But at the same time, it will be a little bit like, it used to only be that you could get in here with an airplane, and now here's my pickup truck.
And now here's a couple of miles. Maybe 600 square miles that are easy access on foot now, by vehicle and foot.
Right.
with the thousands and thousands of thousands still really only accessible by aircraft.
Yeah.
A little bit more foot traffic availability for hiking.
Yeah.
But
which even for that part of the Brooks Range, there's a lot of federal land that's closed anyway.
Yeah, anyway, and
but
you know how I've been on this issue from the beginning.
Yeah.
And honestly, my attitude has only grown more stubborn as I've gotten older, since it's been an issue for quite some time.
And there's something to be said for all of the benefits that we will, in theory, get out of this. There's some serious upside to it.
For the state, huge
if
for
it
the
all
state.
goes through. I mean, especially for the combination of the natural gas pipeline, and if the Ambler Road goes through, you know, that there was folks that were all up in arms about this Manh Choh mine going in when it was happening, and then trucking all that ore out. It has proven to be a money-laden affair.
And it's almost as if a few more trucks on the road aren't a problem.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that thing has been incredibly lucrative from the information that you and I have come across.
And I remember talking to somebody, and they said, "Well, why don't they just build all the facilities down there?" I was like, "It can't be cheaper to truck it."
Oh yeah, it can.
I said, so and how many people are they going to have to hire? Mm-hmm. They're going to have to hire the same. You know, you're right. Like, it doesn't make well, yeah. Why wouldn't you just truck it? Yeah. So what if it's halfway across the state?
Yeah. Who cares? Yeah. It's an interesting thing just from an industrial standpoint, how much that's going to grow the economy. And obviously, it's going to take some time. It's going to be trickle-down effect. It's not all going to happen immediately. It's going to take some time for the general population to see that for the most part, unless you are directly involved in those industries.
Yeah. Well, it will make the economy better.
Yeah.
That will be the trickle-down effect that we will all notice. Mm-hmm. You say the most, or whether we notice it or not, that will happen.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe increasing fuel prices.
You think so?
I don't know. I don't think it could decrease them.
Yeah.
Man, I don't claim to be in economics. I really know much about them at all, but it just seems if we're burning more of it to do something like that, it's not going to decrease the prices.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, they say fuel prices are the lowest they've been in a long, long time in the lower 48.
It dropped 20 cents a gallon today.
I drive a diesel, man.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You know the cheapest stations for diesel in town for the last 6 months have been the Three Bears in North Pole.
Really?
For diesel. Yeah, it's 409 right now. Everywhere else it's like 419 or more.
Huh.
That I've seen. I think there's some that are around that, but for the most part, I don't know. The Shell that Three Bears has, for whatever reason, is cheaper.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, gas at Safeway today was $3.69. It has been $3.89 for a while.
Okay.
Pretty nice.
When I first year I drove a diesel was cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Significantly.
Never been that way since.
It has been a time or two. But anyway.
So we went on a brown bear hunt.
Oh, yeah, this is a hunting podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually. This is
like the in between all the great interviews.
I listened. I listen to a podcast pretty regularly. It's another hunting industry related podcast. I'm not going to say which one it is, but not that it would matter. But they routinely get off on these types of tangents and just random conversations. Yeah. And then when they get back on the subject at hand that they're actually supposed to be talking about, or that they said they were going to talk about, the one guy says, "This is undoubtedly the type of hunting content that you are all here to hear." Now back to what you're actually here to hear. But now back to the hunting story. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Yeah, so 2 weeks on the Alaska coastline, out in the middle of nowhere.
Must be nice.
It was fun. It was a good time. I was in that general area a couple of years ago guiding for an old-time outfit that has since retired. The outfitter retired, and he's no longer in the guide business. He had been around for a long, long, long time, and it was fun to get to work for that outfit at least just once, and just get to meet some of the guys that have been there for a long time and see that old operation. There's a lot of history there, and it was it was just a fun experience just to get to see it at the end. But I learned a lot about that area, kind of made friends with one of the pilots that lives not terribly far from there in an adjacent village, which, in coastal Alaska can be a couple 100 miles, but it's an adjacent village. Mm-hmm. And we went through there on the way to the other village where we guided out of. And so I kind of made a contact there and stayed in touch with the pilot. And when I got home, I think I told you, I told my buddy Remy, I told my wife, and I told a few other people, I said, in 2 years, when the next fall season comes around, mm-hmm. because in that unit of the state, fall brown bear season falls in odd years, and spring season comes in even years. So it's kind of an every other year type of mm-hmm. a hunting season, and that helps keep the pressure down in that part of the state, and it really helps a lot. I think it's a big factor that speaks to how well the big bears are doing down there. There's a lot of bears, and for anyone that knows Alaska very well or knows kind of the game management unit breakdown and those unique season types, the game management unit where we were, and it's a gigantic area. It's packed with brown bears, world known for its brown bear population. And this year they made the season open a week earlier than they had. I don't think it had ever been opened that early since they had gone to that type of season dates. So when I was there 2 years ago in that unit guiding, it was October 7th to 21st was brown bear season. And this year they opened it on October 1st and didn't close it again until October 21st. So it was a 3-week season, and opening it a week earlier than they had been, which I talked to a few other guides that work in that area, and one of them actually, as it turns out, had been one of the ones kind of pushing for that season date limit change to go into effect. And he said part of the reason is the weather is better earlier in the year, and there's also the chance for more fish to still be in the creeks, and so you're going to see more bears in theory if you have good weather, and hopefully you'll have better weather earlier in October. And hopefully it'll afford the outfitters of the area the ability to kill out faster and get out of there before it gets awful with the weather conditions, because that area does get a lot of really bad weather. It's known for high winds, sometimes just incessant winds, and a lot of rain. And 2 years ago, my client and I, we had decent weather. I don't think we lost much hunting time compared to what we could have. On the way in, just all the guides getting there, we got stuck in a village for, I think it was like 5 days, just because we couldn't even get out of the village because it was blowing so hard and socked in, and couldn't even get to base camp. But as far as the hunting trip was concerned 2 years ago, we had pretty good weather. I think we only lost like a day or two out of 2 weeks. And this year, when your dad and I and our friend Jason went on this trip, we were there for 14 days. We got there for the opening of the season, and we left. I think we flew home the 15th or something like that. Okay. I think we got out of the field on the 14th. I think that sounds right. But about 2 weeks anyway, and for the days that we were hunting, we didn't lose any days to weather. It got kind of gusty some of the nights, like in the dark, but it didn't really blow all that hard, or rain all that hard for that matter, during the day. It wasn't super horrible weather conditions. Obviously, there were some days where it seemed like it didn't stop raining from the time you got out of the tent at first light to the time you got back in the tent in the dark. But it was tolerable. It wasn't so windy and so heavy rain that you were like, all right, I'm taking off my rain gear and getting in the tent because it's warm and dry in there. And we brought an Arctic Oven tent that was Jason's.
Which one?
The same one that your dad has. It's the newer version? It's the dome.
Okay.
It's the dome tent style, and it's 10 by 10 floor print.
Is that the 6 or the 8?
It's probably the 6, I think.
Okay. I know my dad has a 6.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So your dad said it's the same one that he has.
Okay.
So it'd be the 6-man then.
What color?
Yellow.
Oh.
It was beautiful because you could see it.
Yeah, yeah.
All the way across the bay, you could see it when we did finally walk over there when the wind was right. But it was awesome. The only thing was we should have seam sealed it before we took it down there. But we did that on a sunny day about 4 or 5 days into the trip.
Yeah.
Because
a little bit of seam grip?
No seam seal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we actually had a bottle of seam seal that had come with the tent.
Okay.
So, yeah. Actually, it was your dad that he remembered, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to grab that seam seal because it was sunny all day that day. I think we had like 2 or 3 days at least where it didn't rain all day. It was beautiful. And on one of those days, your dad sprang into action in the middle of the day, like noon, 1 o'clock. And
jumped up, said he couldn't stand sitting around, had to get some work done.
Well, there wasn't a ton of idle time, actually, really with any of us.
Okay.
There was always something going on. Jason took advantage of the fact that our latrine shovel was a clam shovel.
Okay.
So Jason was...
Did you have a full-on clam shovel?
Yeah.
Like...
Well, I mean, the handle was this long.
That's what I mean. Like, the handle's like that long, plus your blade's like that long. Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
'Cause I was just thinking, I got one of those sitting in front of my shed I use for post holes, but...
Yep. So we had borrowed a clam shovel for camp to dig our latrine holes. And
he was digging clams.
And he said, I wonder if there's clams out here. I'm like, well, hey, it's the coast. We're on the salt water, so give her a try. And he goes, well, did you dig clams here when you were here last time? I said, Jason, I live in Fairbanks. Come on. Only just a couple of years ago in deer camp did I even start bringing a fishing rod.
Right.
So, no, I have never dug clams here before. He goes, I'm going to go see if I can find some clams. I mean, one day he came back with like 30 or 40 clams. It was pretty good, man.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he brought a little jet boil pan and the little adapter that kind of keeps it up off the burner to put the pan on. And we would just cook them up in salt water and just boil them till they pop open, then give them a couple more minutes or so. And then pop them open and pull the guts out and pull the sandy parts off and then put a little dab of Tabasco on there and down the hatch. It was good. Your dad ate one.
I've never been a...
Yeah.
No, not
Your
my
dad
thing.
ate one and said, yeah, it's not bad, but, I guess I know how to survive. He goes, I'm fine with freeze-dried.
I would probably be the same way.
Jason and I sat down and ate the entire crate of clams. Like, it was probably 30-something clams, and we ate it all in one sitting. I fully expected to wake up in the middle of the night having to go use the clam shovel for its other purposes, but it didn't happen. My stomach didn't get upset.
I mean, you got to keep... This is actually fresh food. You're not in Fairbanks eating seafood.
Yeah, it's not a sushi joint in town. Yeah, it was good, though. It was a really nice substitute for freeze-dried and, 3-year-old expired energy bars from my old food stash, which I ate all of it.
I actually have a decent freeze-dried stash since my sheep hunt got cut short.
Yeah, I think
I had built up, and actually I'd built up quite a bit, and I still had to go spend a few $100. Mm-hmm. And I got back, and I hadn't eaten that much, and so I ended up with, I was gone for like 6 days, so I ended up with a box full of freeze-dried still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is nice. Something from the trip.
Yep.
And a lot of nice gear. A lot of really nice gear.
Yeah. I did pretty good on food.
Okay.
I ate most of what I figured I would eat for that amount of time. And then I brought an extra 4 or 5 days worth of food just to be safe.
How was my dad on food?
Great.
Okay, because I remember before he left a week or two, he was over at my house for something. And he said something like, yeah, Dalton said, bring some extra, but I think I have like 8, it was like 2 days short or something. And I was like, here. And I handed him the Steve Ranella.
Yeah.
The peak ones. I said, here, these will change your life compared to all those old mountain houses you got.
So he brought I guess he had gotten them at a customer's house a few
it was like
years
a Bucket
ago.
Mountain House or something he'd gotten.
Yeah, and it was like the same 3 meals the whole time that he ate, except the peak refuels that you gave him. That was the only variety that he had.
Well, then they must have seemed like amazing.
And it was like chicken and rice Mountain House that was a handful of years expired.
So that's like 30 years old.
Which tells you how old it is.
Yeah.
It's chicken and rice, chili mac, and what was the other one? I forget it now. Anyway, but yeah, it was like the same 2 or 3 meals that he had for 2 weeks.
I've had some pretty expired Mountain Houses in my day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've had a few.
I'm sure you have too. I'm sure, of course, guide camps, they probably don't get too old most of the time.
Most of the time. Every once in a while, you get a box that's in the back of the wall tent somewhere.
I had some freeze-dried gummy bears that were like, I think they'd expired in 2010 or something.
Where did you get freeze-dried gummy bears?
They were Mountain House.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, if they're expired, like Mountain
I've
House
never even seen those.
Mountain House has a 30-year shelf life.
Something like that,
and so whatever the expiration date is, it was made 30 years before that.
Wow.
So I know I for like 4 or 5 days, I was putting a roof on my boss's cabin, and he's not a hunter or anything like that. He just
they
bought
were
this
out
cabin,
there. I got you.
and he gave me and one of the guys turned the boat over to us, and and we'd been out there. I'd been on the cabin with him and stuff, and to work on it. And he's like, here you go. Here's everything you need. And he'd already brought most of the material out there and stuff. But we went out there for a few days and put a new roof on it. And I said, do we need to bring food? And he goes, no, there's food out there. There's a box of Mountain House and some stuff. There was a box of Mountain House. And it was all expired like 10 years previous. And so I ate 40-year-old Mountain House for 3-4 days.
Nice.
None of it was not stale. Like it all had that kind of stale flavor, and none of it completely was the texture it was supposed to be. Like the meat that was kind of chewy.
Yeah.
And, like it was fine. It was fine.
I mean, yeah.
And there was only a few meals that I bit into. It was like, I don't think I'm going to eat this. Just the flavor was not there, But I think we depleted that whole box of Mountain House that he had, and I told him, go buy peak refuel next time. I think he bought it at a yard sale. Anyway.
Yeah, but no, he did pretty good.
Back to the topic at hand.
Yeah, he did okay on food. I did bring a few things like just for day snacks that ended up being a really good idea. The last day I was at work, I think I worked. Well, I think it was 2 days before we left that I was at work because we left right after the weekend, and we were at Ace Hardware for something, and the little checkout line. The little shelving there, they had the Iowa Smokehouse Hunter Sticks, whatever. So
I've got a bunch of that stuff over there.
I bought a big pack of those, and we, rationed those out a couple a day and ate the last of them on the last day, as the plane was coming to get your dad and I on the second trip. But yeah, actually, your dad brought the biggest hit for a day snack for the group. Idaho potatoes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he told me he was going to bring those.
Yeah. That was awesome. It was like the second or third day in, and your dad goes, well, you guys are both eating some snacks. It's the middle of the day. I had a couple of bars and an Iowa beef stick or whatever.
Did you bring like Pro Bars or?
Whatever I had.
Okay.
I mean, I was eating Snickers that looked like white dog turds from the yard. Oh, yeah.
Through the old stuff.
I'm not exaggerating when I say 80% of the stuff I brought for day snacks was about 3 years expired. It had been a while.
Oh.
But, now
saved money, yeah.
Now all of it's gone, and that's great. But he said, well, I'm kind of hungry now that I'm watching all you guys eat. I brought some Idaho potatoes. So every day after that, we would cook up a whole bag of Idaho potatoes. I
can't remember, did he say he was going to break them down into smaller?
So he did that the first day, and he had half a bag. And then every day after that, he said, we can just cook up a whole bag, and we can all three share it. That's what we did every day after that. So every day
So that's some nice, good calorie hit.
12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we'd go, wait a minute, we're 10 minutes past potato time. So the first few times I made them in Jason's little Jetboil pan, and just because we had, just to have somewhere to stir them up. and I brought my MSR reactor with that big 1.5 liter pot. But the first few times I made him in Jason's pan, and then he goes, those things are really hard to clean out of there later if you don't wash it out right away. Why don't you make it in your own water pot? So I did after that.
If you rinse it out right away, they're fine. If you don't, then...
Yeah. Kind of sets up like rocks.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you could use it in place of cement.
Yeah, I didn't try that, but that was a really good hit for a little day snack. I'm going to be doing that again.
Yeah, I have a bunch of those.
Yeah, they are lightweight, and they make a good amount of food.
I meant to actually take some as part of my sheep hunting thing.
It fills you up.
I didn't. But.
I mean, some of those 4 cheese and then Applewood smoked bacon and cheese. Yeah, it was good.
Did you bring some bacon?
Your dad brought 1 pack of pre-cooked bacon from Costco.
Yeah, I think I told him about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I told him, I said, well, I didn't know we were going to bring this kind of food, or else I would have brought like 3 of the giant bags.
I keep telling you, the weight to calorie and protein ratio is higher with a pound of pre-cooked bacon than it is in freeze-dried food.
The problem with that is that you can't just eat a ration of pre-cooked bacon.
You can eat. I mean,
it's not humanly possible for an American.
Dude, one of those 1 pound, or maybe it's 2 pounds, whatever it is, of pre-cooked bacon is enough for you to have like 4 slices. I remember it's like 50 slices. So you yourself, that's a breakfast. That's partial breakfast, part of your breakfast every day. Just like you're sitting at your dinner table and get fed a few pieces of bacon. 2
words. How rude. To sit in the tent with 2 other guys sitting there and they don't have bacon.
Then you tell them to bring bacon.
Yes, that would have been the thing to do.
Anyway, I mean, he brought bacon, so.
Yeah, and we ate it all at 1 lunch sitting. Yeah, he was like, here, I got some bacon with the potatoes. And we ate the entire pack.
I carried bacon into the mountains with me.
Yeah.
And back out.
Yep.
I ate a decent amount of it, and then I was eating it for breakfast before I go to work.
There you go.
For like a week.
There you go. So anyway, this trip, your dad brought his compound bow.
Yeah.
And handgun for little personal defense backup. He brought a Glock 20.
Okay.
10 millimeter, which he had a red dot put on there.
Okay. I think he told me.
I think he said he sent it off to the Glock store.
Probably to get it milled.
And had it milled and then mounted and zeroed, which I checked 0 on a rock as the plane was making the trip to get Jason out and then coming to get us when we were done hunting, and I shot it and tested it. I hadn't shot a Glock 20 in a long time.
I don't know if I've ever shot one.
I do like how familiar it feels compared to my Glock 19.
Since you shoot
because
that makes sense.
Carry a 19 all the time.
It's part of the reason I like that 320 X10. It's familiar with the 320.
It just feels very familiar. But you know, I already have my XD Springfield 10 millimeter that I like as well. That's a fine shooting gun. But anyway, so your dad brought his compound and a handgun, and then I brought my 10 millimeter and my 375 Ruger with no scope. I took the scope off before the trip because your dad wanted to bow hunt, and I brought my recurve, my Black Widow, in case my turn came to shoot a bear.
And you could get close.
And I could get close enough. I figured might as well bring the recurve just in case. And I won't take it out with me out of the tent to get it soaking wet and dirty with salt water unless I know I'm one of the next guys up to shoot. Because when your dad and Jason decided to go on the trip, I figured, okay, you know, your dad's been wanting to do this most of his adult life. Jason never been brown bear hunting before either. He used to commercial fish down in that part of the state, and he has got history with, you know, wanting to shoot a brown bear for a long, long, long time.
Right.
So I said, all right, at this point, I want to get these guys their bears. And Jason said that he was going to hold out for something 9.5 or better, because if he couldn't get a 9.5 or better, he wanted to keep on being able to apply for Kodiak and go there. So, spoiler alert, we weren't on Kodiak, but that's not hard to figure out. But anyway, so your dad wanted a decent bear with his bow. That's what they both said at the beginning, was your dad wanted any decent bear with his bow, and the hard part was just going to be getting close enough, which I understand that. On the way down there, I had kind of talked myself into, all right, I have the recurve. I'm only willing to settle for a smaller bear if I get it with my recurve. And then we got there and started seeing bears. And just the memories came flooding back of, I really should not settle to shoot a smaller bear just because it's with a recurve. And I ended up not shooting a bear on this trip for several different reasons, but we'll get to that. But anyway, so I just carried my 375 Ruger with my iron sights basically to be the backup and just try to help your dad get into bow range on a bear. And then if Jason shot, I had told Jason, I said, I would like to start shooting. I would like to have you start shooting if you find a bear you want to kill. I don't want to start shooting at anything over 100 yards unless the scenario is just right.
Right.
And so anyway, right off the bat, we had some pretty good weather. We were seeing a lot of bears. There was a lot of fish around. And with the weather being pretty ideal, we were seeing bears at that super early first light in the morning. That first 30 minutes of light, we were catching a couple of big bears that were leaving the fish streams and headed back into the alders. And then the last couple hours of the evening, things were starting to ramp back up. And it was all kind of centered around the tidal activity, because as the high water happens, you get a burst of fish that go up. And then at low water, you get old half-dead fish that are kind of washing down out of the creeks, and they're still trying to stay up in there. And then even at low water, we were having fish that were still trying to get up out of the salt water and go up the freshwater streams in about that much water. And half the fish's back was out of the water, and you could see it. You could see its eyeballs above the water. Yeah, salmon. And you could see their eyeballs above the water as they're sitting out there. And I had them in the spot and scope looking at these salmon out in the tide flats, and they're sitting there, and then they'd kick and go upstream, and they'd sit there, and then they would make it all the way up, even at dead low tide when there's, you wouldn't think there's enough water for them to get up there, but it was pretty impressive. The last time I was there for the later season dates from the 7th to the 21st.
Got a spawn.
Yeah, got a spawn. It was not that much fish activity. This was definitely a bumper crop of a timing as far as the fish activity, which made the bear hunting easier because the bears are out moving around a lot more, just getting those fish. But still, the biggest bears we saw were that first 30 minutes of light, and you would just usually first thing in the morning, it's borderline impossible unless the wind is perfect when you wake up and you can move over into their area and be within 300 yards of them in the dark. And then as it gets light, you can bust them out there and make a move before they walk to the brush. If the wind was marginal, you just had to get up, get to your glassing spot, and as soon as it got light, you just watch them walk back into the brush, and knowing full well that if you moved in on them, you're just going to ruin it and blow them out of there. So we had a couple of situations like that happen, and didn't have ideal wind to go over a reasonable walking distance away from where we were camped to a bigger stream where we were watching a lot of the bears move. And routinely we would wake up to fresh bear tracks right down the beach, not 70 yards in front of the tent, of bears that had walked by in the dark. It was obvious they were very active at night, which is not that uncommon. Mm-hmm. And daylight was about 8 o'clock to 8:30. It was about a 12-hour daylight cycle. And, they're hungry. They're trying to fatten up and put on all the calories they can before it's time to go dig a hole and go to sleep for the next several months. But anyway, so we finally got a good weather day where the wind was not only good in the morning, going the right direction, but it was also supposed to be, and that was one of the days that I had texted you, and I said, hey, check the Windy app and check the long-term throughout the day forecast of the direction. I wasn't so much concerned about the wind speed as I was the wind direction. And it was supposed to be a favorable direction all day that day and the next day and the next day after that. So I told your dad and Jason, I said, all right, now's our chance to go over to that creek and go see what's going on that we can't see from here, because we can see them when they're out on the beach, but there's a lot that we can't see over there, and there's flats and creek banks and stuff like that, and a lot of terrain that at any given time you can probably only see maybe half the terrain from where you are a couple miles away. So we booked it over there and walked, and we got on a bear that morning. Stalk, it all just didn't quite work out. We did close the distance to bow range on a decent bear, but it just ended up not working out. It just doesn't always work out with a bow. Some things happened, and anyway, your dad ended up not getting that bear. And then we saw another bear after that. I mean, minutes after that, just another 200 yards away. And Jason and I walked over to that one, got into about 90 yards and watched it. That was a big sow. She had a real bad limp, and she was eating berries. And just kind of hanging out, looked at us, looked around, didn't really seem to care. And I didn't want to shoot that bear. I knew it was a sow, and obviously Jason didn't want to shoot it because it wasn't big enough, so we passed on that one. And then we got a big storm that afternoon where we threw up the tarp, cut a little bit of the inside. You get some alder patches that are only about 8 feet, circumference, and they're pretty thick, but from 3 feet and down, there's no branches or leaves. It's just sticks. And so we lopped out a few of those and made a little spot and threw the tarp up over the bushes and staked it out and sat there for a couple hours and waited out the rainstorm. And then it got nice again. And about 6:30 or so, I spotted a big dark bear from about a half a mile away. So even farther from where we had been seeing bears. And I watched it walk down into a creek, and then it walked back up on top of this little high bank and laid down. And I didn't bring my spotter with me from the tent, and we were a long ways from there. And I looked at my binoculars, and I said, okay, that's the class size of bear that we're looking for. That's a nice bear. And so he was laying down, and I couldn't really get a great look at him, especially from a half a mile away, and the wind was still blowing pretty good. So I said, all right, we need to get closer to this bear and get a better look at it. But I think this is a shooter for anyone here. And your dad, having that opportunity earlier and not getting that one, he had said, all right, Jason, now it's your turn. Kind of like what you and I do usually. You trade opportunities more or less. So, and just the situation that this was, even had your dad been up to shoot, I would have told your dad, look, this is more of a rifle situation. There's just not a good way to get to 40 yards or less on this bear. So anyway, so your dad kind of hung back out at about 400 or 500 yards out in the flats, and there was a big washed up tree root ball that he could just kind of stand by. And at that distance, unless you're doing jumping jacks and running up and down the beach, the bears don't even pay attention to you at 400 or 500 yards. As long as you're not being loud, and as long as you have good wind and they're preoccupied, you are just a part of the beach to them. So Jason and I started walking towards it. And then by this time, he had gotten up off that high bank and walked up the creek. And we figured, okay, he went back in there fishing. So we started walking out there pretty quickly. I said, stay single file and just do what I do. If I stop, you stop. If I get down on my knees, you get down on your knees, and just copy what I do. You don't need to see the bear. You just copy what I'm doing because I'll see it. And so Jason had a 375 H&H. It's a CZ 550. And he's got a 1-to-8 power. He's got the same Trichicon scope as I have on my Model 70. And so we got into probably 400-ish yards, and then the bear popped back out. And so we, just due to the area, we couldn't get around it and use anything for cover. We were just we either had to approach this thing in the open, or we weren't going to get any closer to it. So we just knelt down and waited and figured, all right, he's going to lay down again, eat some fish, and then he's going to get back up and go fishing again in a few minutes. Well, instead, he walked up and down the creek a few times, kind of pacing out in the open on the beach, and then he walked up on the beach berm and laid down in the grass where we could see the front half of his body. And he laid down on his side, crossed his front legs, and laid his chin on his elbows like that.
Like my dog.
Like a dead bear for trophy pictures.
No, that's how my dog lays down. He'll do that in the living room, legs on top of legs.
Yep. So he laid there. I mean, head down, and then every time a seagull or an eagle would squawk or make a little sound, he'd just pick his head up, look around, and kind of stretch his neck out, and then he'd put his head back down. And he would do that about every 15, 20 seconds. And I thought, all right, well, he's obviously very efficient in his process. He's not wasting any extra calories because earlier on in the trip, Jason made a comment like, so that these bears are kind of lazy then. And I said, no, they're efficient. They only move when they have to because they don't want to burn any of that fat unnecessarily. They're trying to bulk up. So he laid there for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes like that. And we just had to sit still. Wind was great. Anyway, and I eventually said to Jason, I said, all right, well, we got to move. Like this, we're still far enough away that I think if we move slowly, he won't pick us up. But we need to try to close some distance here and see what we can get away with. And by that time, we were around the quarter-mile mark, and I told Jason, I said, I think this bear is 9.5 plus. I know he's well over 9. I don't think he's a 10-foot bear. He could be close to 10 foot, but I know he's over 9, and he's probably about 9.5. And so Jason said, all right, I'll go ahead and shoot him. So I said, great, let's kill this thing then. And I had told Jason, I said, it's big enough that if you don't want to shoot it because you don't want to accidentally shoot something that's not quite 9.5 foot, and you really want to make sure that it's 9.5 or better, then I will happily shoot this bear because I know it's over 9. So anyway, we started kind of just shuffling on our knees, just out across the mud flats in the grass. And we ended up closing the distance to about 280 yards, just kind of crawling across. And at one point we got to a creek that was about thigh deep, and we were able to just, kind of crouch up and duck walk over to the edge of the water and sneak in there. And there were other bears up the creek a ways that were looking at us and fishing, and one of them crossed the creek and grabbed a fish and stood up on the other bank and then just kind of laid there and ate fish and didn't really pay us any mind. But so we sat there next to that creek, then on the other side of it, again at about 200 and something yards, too far to shoot really. And I could hear that other bear on the creek kind of moving its way towards us, just working its way down the creek. And I said, okay, well, either this bear is going to get too close to us, and that was like a little 7.5 foot sow. It was not anything we wanted to shoot. So I told Jason, I said, look, we're either going to have to move this bear off because it's going to walk right up to us because it has no idea what we are, and the wind is in our favor for both of these bears. Or we're going to have to get up and move on this bear and risk spooking it. I said, but I would rather risk spooking this bear by moving on it than spook the big bear by having to scare off a small bear at pushing 300 yards. Because, what's the worst that can happen? He either way, in this scenario, we lose the big bear. And at this point, it was 20 to 8. And so we only have a little bit less than an hour of light left anyway. So I said, all right, let's just keep on moving a little bit at a time. And at some point in that advance, he stood up, looked around, walked down the bank, got back in the creek, and disappeared. I said, okay, now's time. Move, run. So we took off running over to that creek mouth to where we were about 60 yards from where he'd been laying both times and the mouth of that creek. And I said, okay, if he comes back out here, we've got him. We're right in front of him. We'll just kneel down on the grass and we'll wait for him to get out in the open and we'll blast him. And we waited, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And then there was a little bit of like a little sand ridge that is the high bank on the right side from our perspective, where I'd seen him climb up on the first time I saw him and lay down and ate a fish. And we looked at the map really quick just to see if that was a creek or if that was just a little slough bed. But the second time we saw him get up and move from in close like that, it was easy to see that he was fishing. And so I said, hey, that's a creek. And Jason had thought it was a creek before, but we didn't really know. And so I said, well, this creek might go over to where this one is that we just crossed. This might connect. And then Jason had even mentioned on the stalk, he said, well, you think he'll go to the big creek? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. What we do know is that he's been here twice, laying down and eating right here. So who knows? So we decided to go over and get up on that high bank to wait and see if we could see him going over to the big creek or back to this creek. And as soon as we got over to that little high rise, I peeked over, and there he is walking out across, going to the big creek. And he's, a big bear like that, moving just at a normal walk, you got to run to catch him. So I jumped back out of sight, and I said, he's there going to the big creek. We got to go now. Run. So we took off running across the grass. And by this time, your dad had closed in farther when the bear disappeared. He had run in farther so that he could film. And catch it all on video from a better distance. And I think he had made it up to the creek that we had crossed. So he was only another 100 yards or 150 yards away from us even. And so we got to the big creek that we had already crossed, and I looked around the corner of this little, dune ridge, whatever, that was covered in grass. And that dune probably constituted like 10 feet. So it was well enough cover that we were completely out of view of this thing, and it was quiet running. It was just sand, so it was just dead quiet, which was awesome. We popped out at the edge of that, and I looked over, and the bear was standing right at the creek 75 yards away looking in the water for fish. And I thought, oh, we got you now. And we got over into position, and the bear turned and was walking away from us along the creek edge. And we got set up. We were on our knees shooting. And we'd had the talk about shot placement, and the first bullet has got to be a double lung shot. That way, if all else fails and any following opportunities of backup shots or follow-up shots, if guns jam or we miss or a combination of both, we need to know that first shot is a killing shot. So the bear was at about 75 yards when we got set up, and he started to walk away. And I hit him with the rangefinder one more time just to make sure, and he was out at about 85, 90 yards, and he got a few more steps, and he went into a little dip from another creek that was coming in, and he came up out of that dip, and he was moving enough that I thought, all right, I got to either stop him now or we got to chase after him, and you know how that goes. You're only going to be able to chase him so far. So I let out a couple of growls, and as soon as he turned broadside, Jason let him have it and hit him with his 375. And I immediately followed up with my 375. And my first shot, I'm almost positive, hit him in the low leg. And I'm shooting iron sights at 100 yards in not real great light, which is not a great excuse. It's only 100 yards and it's an awfully big target. But anyway, I shot pretty soon after Jason shot, and the bear spun and took off running at an angle away from us to the left, away from the creeks, which was great. I'm glad he didn't just jump in the water and cannonball, because the water was pretty deep right there. So I immediately reloaded, shot again, and I could see the smoke come off the chest. And I thought, okay, now I'm on, as if I had this zero. Yeah, it's just in the process. Yeah. But you know how it goes. Bang, bang, and maybe I had moved a little bit because Jason's gun went off, and I just instinctively just shot right away just because. But it is kind of a small target at that distance with those iron sights. Yeah. It's not super easy. I was missing my scope for sure. But anyway, so I shot again. Jason shot again. All told, I shot 5 shots, and I think I missed once. Well, I know I missed once, but I'm almost positive that I found the other 4 hits from my gun. And I recovered 1 bullet. And Jason shot, I don't remember. I mean, I think he hit it 4 or 5 times and then missed a couple as well. I stopped shooting at 5 because at that point he was still getting up and trying to go, and I quit shooting. I said, hit him again, and Jason would hit him again at that point, and he'd go back down. Then he'd get up and he'd try to crawl himself farther to the brush, and he wasn't super close to the brush, but at that distance not being able to really tell the depth perception of how close he was to the brush, I didn't want to take any chances. And so I would just tell Jason, he gets back up, and I was still on him, but I'd just tell him, all right, shoot him again. So he'd hit him, and whoom, he'd go back down. And your dad did catch about the first 70% of the shots on camera. And then your dad thought we were out of ammo. Well, he knew we were out of ammo, but he thought we were done shooting because we were out of ammo. He didn't realize that we were just topping off the magazines for round 2. And I only shot one more time there, but Jason shot another 3-4 times.
Oh, so did you turn the video off?
He stopped the video a little bit too soon.
Oh, yeah, you showed it to me,
Yeah. So that there were a few more shots that would have been cool because all of those were hits on Jason's part, where it would get back up and try to go again, and I'd say, shoot him again, and boom, and he'd go back down, and then he'd get back up, and then he'd go back down. That was fun to watch, and Jason pulverized him there for sure.
Can we take a break real quick?
Yeah. And on the ground, not moving. So, yeah, it was, some bears you walk up on that are of average size, and this is especially pertinent with interior black bears, where you walk up on them and you go, huh, kind of looked bigger when I shot it.
Yeah, let all the air out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Just deflated it. I walked up on this bear, and it was laying there belly up with the feet out like that. And I looked at it, and I kind of walked around and in between Jason and the bear and looked at the other side of it, and I picked up a foot, hardly, and I said, oh boy, this is bigger than I thought it was. And it ended up being a little over 9.5. It was closer to 10 than 9.5. It was a big bear. And it took all we could do, all 3 of us, to roll it after we were halfway through skinning it from the bottom side. So the pictures of the bear do not do it justice, which is really tough because you really want to get great pictures of the bear, but it's on its side because I don't know that we could have rolled it over with all 4 legs out, as I like to do it. And with springtime bears, I've been able to move, 9.5, 10-foot bears in the springtime a lot easier, but they don't have a few hundred extra pounds of fat. Yeah. This thing was dense, super dense. And,
the picture was great.
Yeah.
But you just can't, unless you know what a big bear looks like, it doesn't look that big.
The best pictures that we got were the ones that I took at the end with just Jason. The ones of him and I together, and then your dad with Jason, those ones didn't turn out as good. But the ones at the end, I specifically wanted to make sure that Jason had the best pictures because it was his bear. Right. So we took a little more time and got the right angles and everything. And that one does it a little bit better justice, I think. But man, it was awesome. And so we got to skin in that one, and it still hadn't rained since that afternoon, and the skies were clearing off, and the moon was pretty full that night. And then as we got to skinning it, it was dark pretty quick after the pictures were over. I mean, we got the pictures right at last light. And we were probably about, 20 minutes in, and we were in a little bit of a depression out in this grass field and we were in between 2 creeks that were chock full of fish. I mean, you could hear them just, swirling in the water. And the one creek was about half as wide as this table is.
Okay.
And only about as deep as this glass is in the skinniest part. And there was fish sitting in that creek, just sitting right there. And it blew back out a little bit wider, maybe as wide as this room, a little bit up from there. But the bear trails on either side of that creek, where it was real, real skinny like that, the grass was just stomped into the mud. And there was piles of fish bones just everywhere. It was awesome. And we got over there to the dead bear and went, yeah, that's why they're here. I mean, look at all this. This is a graveyard for fish. And there's, dead fish carcasses in the creek, and you can see them in there. So anyway, we got into skinning Jason's bear, and Jason turns his head and pans around. Guys, and you know the tone of voice when something is going on. And I jumped over and grabbed my rifle and picked my head up. And there was a bear standing like 40, 50 yards away in the creek, in the small creek, looking at us. And I yelled, "Hey, get out of here!" We're all yelling at this point. And the bear just turned and walked over, looked back at us again. And it was dead downwind of us too. But didn't care, just really was just probably more curious than anything else. And it looked like a pretty sizable bear. Because and I had on my new Fenix headlamp, which is maximum 1400 lumens. Mm-hmm. So I turned on both bulbs super bright as soon as I saw the bear, bright lighted it, and so I could actually see the body. And when it turned and walked into the bushes, I said, "That's not a small bear either. That's a decent sized one, and it's lighter colored, I think." We'll get back to that later. So we went back to skinning it, and then, every couple of minutes we all made it a point to, all right, Jason, look around, give us a scan. And then, Jeff, give us a scan. Then I would get up. Every few minutes we'd kind of take turns just keeping your heads up. We ended up getting that one skinned out, and we skinned it slowly, really took our time because we didn't want to pack out any more weight than we already had to.
All that fat especially, yeah.
And you got to take some time.
Keep the fat off the hide.
With that much fat, it's really easy to just quick skin it, and you think you're skinning it close, and you leave 1/8 of an inch on that whole hide, and
That's a couple hundred pounds.
It's a lot of weight in a hurry. So we took it off right at the base joint on each of the hands or the paws. That way we didn't have to pack out the wrist, the whole hand on each foot. But anyway, and then we pulled the skull out so that we could split up the weight. And so Jason packed the skull, and then I only had to carry the hide, and I had a drum liner with me. And I was using my Initial Ascent 8K pack, and I figured since I didn't have the skull in the hide, that's a lot of bulk, that takes up a lot of space. So I figured with just the hide, and it was wet, and so I said, let's just fold it up a little bit, and then we'll just slink it into the main bag, and I'll just stuff the drum liner in the bag first, and then we'll just feed it into that big pack tube, and then I'll just get it cinched up, and I'll just carry that, and you guys can carry my dry bag, my stuff sack with my jackets and stuff like that in there. And again, still wasn't raining. By the time we were all done with it, it was probably 10:30. I mean, it probably took us a couple hours, but that was with skinning it super tight. We skinned out the head. We took most of the head meat off, just, again, trying to save weight.
You didn't try to eat any of that, did you?
No. We did eat another part of the bear, though. Yeah, Jason carved out a little bit of backstrap.
Okay.
We threw a few tiny little pieces of it in his jet boil pan with Crisco and salt and pepper and Johnny's. You know what it tasted like? Crisco, salt and pepper, and Johnny's. It wasn't bad, but anyway. So, and then we spent a good amount of time looking for another internal part on the bear.
Okay.
That none of us had ever extracted before, but that someone in the group really wanted to find, just out of curiosity.
Okay.
So we ended up taking all the innards out of the bear, or at least part of them that time, and spent some time kind of rummaging through all the guts. And then I figured, well, I'm trying to look for some bullets, and I had found this little piece, just a little piece of the copper jacketing from the Nosler partition, because Jason was shooting 300 grain Nosler partitions out of his 375 H&H, and then I found one shank from my 270 grain. There's still a piece of bear hair on that. I'll leave it on there. This is a 270 grain shock hammer from Hammer Bullets.
See that thing?
Out of that 375 Ruger. Those are hand loads that you and I worked up a couple of springs ago. And I found 2 pedals with that one. They were about 4 inches apart on either side of that shank. And then I found another little pinhole exit where another pedal had popped out. So it had caught 2 pedals and the shank. So that was pretty cool. That made me smiled pretty big when I found a couple of pieces of bullets and I found the shank from the hammer. And so anyway, I ended up packing it quite a ways, and then Jason had brought a little inflatable kayak, and so I packed it. I packed it a good ways.
So did it fit in your bag then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did. It was pretty full, but that main bag is 8,000 cubic inches.
It says a lot for that bag.
And without the skull in it,
yeah,
it made it a lot easier to fit it all in there.
And if you had to, you probably could have strapped the skull underneath, like the cub or the lid, or even underneath the pannier.
Yeah, underneath the lid, I certainly could have fit the skull there, but
more strap room.
Yeah, but it would have been out.
Yeah, that says a lot about that.
Oh yeah, and it was heavy. It's probably the heaviest one that I've had in a pack that I've had to carry any amount of distance. I may have had one that was heavier than that a few years ago, maybe, but that hide was dry. It was a bigger bear than that, but it was dry, and it was spraying. But that one had the skull in it, though. That one might have been heavier than this one. But this one, so where it died, it wasn't in the water, but it was marshy. Mm-hmm. So after, laying in the water and all that weight, and then we're stomping around the water or in the mud and the grass there, and then we had to roll it, obviously. And so the hide was totally saturated. It was soaking wet. It was heavy. It was easy in that 180-pound, probably pushing 200-pound range. I couldn't budge that pack on my own. Couldn't do it. And, they both helped me get up on my feet. And I brought trekking poles. And then your dad even carried my rifle for me because I didn't bring a rifle sling like an idiot.
Yeah, you told me.
Usually I don't carry a rifle, carry my brown bear rifle on my shoulder a lot when I'm brown bear hunting or guiding. But it is nice when you're packing them out to be able to just hang it on your shoulder and use both your poles, especially crossing all those creeks. I mean, some of those creeks are pretty deep and they were flowing pretty quick. So it's nice to be able to have two sticks for contact and stability.
Well, especially with weight.
Yeah, and it was heavy. But, I got it cinched in there pretty good. I mean, really, when you look at the pictures, Jason snapped a few pictures on the pack out. Because, we turned off our headlamps on the pack out. Once we got back out to the beach, we turned off the headlamps. It was that bright out. There was totally clear skies. You could see all the stars, not a cloud to be seen. And it was super bright moonlight. So I said, I can see 100 yards just in the moonlight because we're out, below high tide lines. So if we see a shadow moving, we'll just turn the lights on. But we can have night vision and save on headlamp batteries because we got a long ways to go back to camp in the dark. But anyway, so we got it to a good spot where then Jason could bring the kayak on the next high tide the next day and come get the hide. So that cut the pack out about in half, I think, if not a little bit.
That must have been nice.
Yeah, about half, yeah. It was awesome.
Especially for the packer.
Yeah, which, I'm happy to do it. It was a blast.
Yeah. But
it was a lot of fun. I mean, the
you're
weight,
willing to do it until somebody has a kayak.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we got it to a good spot, and then we made it back to camp. It was super, super late. Ate some freeze dried and sent a few messages. And hey, Jason got a giant bear and blah blah. So anyway,
to rewind just a little bit.
Yeah.
Is this when Jason used my backpack?
Yes.
So I heard some stories from Jason about this.
Yeah. So
the story.
You and I can interchange packs.
Yeah, and my dad pretty much too.
Yeah,
my dad's a little narrower waist, but he's the same torso.
Yeah. You and I and your dad are a little taller, a little longer torsos. Jason, not so much. Jason has a lot shorter top end, and he carried your pack that your dad had been carrying, your initial Ascent 8K, because he put your dad and I stuffed the skull on the load shelf behind the panniard. And, that way we don't have to put it in the bag. And because we only had the one drum liner. So Jason said, I'll carry out Moe's pack. Jeff, you carry out my little day pack. He had like a little Badlands, like what you and I used to use bear baiting. It was one of those. So your dad carried Jason's pack, and Jason carried your pack. And there was about 5 or 6 inches in between.
Did he cinch the...
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it didn't seem to matter a whole lot.
Did you? I mean, you can adjust that pretty easy.
So he had about 4 or 5 inches between the top of his shoulder and the shoulder straps. So all the weight was on his hips the whole time.
Well, that new hip belt, when I put that on, it sits lower than the original. So that wasn't helping. Like, it changes the way that the pack, like, straps, like, it sits a little lower. And I don't know. Maybe I didn't quite put it on. I really like the way it fits me that way.
Yeah.
But, and it looked like, it looks like it sits a little lower with the frame and everything.
Yeah.
And changes the way the straps sit on my shoulders and stuff a little bit, and I love it.
Yeah.
But
Jason, but by the time we got back to camp, he said, no, when I dumped the hide, and then I was walking on clouds because I was able to take my gear back and carry it back to camp. Right. So that took some of the weight off of Jason. And he's like, man, can we fix this thing? And I said, not quickly. I mean, how fast? I mean, how much time do you want to take? I mean, how bad does it hurt? And he goes, well, it's all on my hips, but we'll just keep going because it's, at this point, it's getting pretty late. It's already late. So we kept on going. He goes,
I would have been better off just taking the belt off.
He goes, yeah, this thing's not very comfortable. I said, yeah, it looks like it sucks. Let's go. Kept on going. And I think your dad said something to the effect of, you've been sore before.
Hell yeah.
One of your dad's signature lines. Like, you've been cold before. You've been wet before. You've been sore before. Yeah. Keep going. But so we were then giving him a hard time. And I said, well, you can happily carry my pack with the hide. And he goes, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So not that either one of them would have shied away from having to carry it if I said, all right, I got to take a break, which, every couple 100 yards, I would say, all right, I'm calling it break time. I'd lean over on my poles and take all the weight off my back.
Yeah.
Anyway, because when you get that heavy, it's just heavy. It's just hard. But it is surprisingly comfortable for as much weight as it was. That frame and that bag and the belt and the suspension system, it was... I will say I do think it is the most comfortable extreme heavy pack weight that I've had to carry yet. It was pretty nice. So anyway, we got to the spot. I dumped it, took my stuff back, and then we hiked back into camp. And then Jason went and got his hide the next morning on the high tide and got it into camp. And it all worked out great. We didn't have a lot of fleshing to do. We had some. It rained quite a bit that next day, but we had my Hilleberg tarp all strung up right in camp there, and so we sat on our milk crates and floats and buoys and stuff, and just put the hide over your knees and flesh away. And your dad popped all the toes, and I turned the face and the head and the ears and everything, and got it all turned. And we had brought 75 pounds of salt and 5 pounds of borax, and we used one bag, focusing on the head and the toes, and then the rest of it, just kind of salt it lightly on the body and just try to make it go a long ways, which on a bear that big, 25 pounds, goes real fast. But we got the important parts salted, and I mean, within an hour of it just laying underneath that tarp all spread out, because then it stopped raining that evening, and so we were able to have it just out in the open air. And then I brought a big green tarp, like a big 10 by 12, just to put over the hide so that we could leave it outstretched with salt before we had to fold it. And within an hour, it was already juicing big time. I mean, the pickling had begun. And all that oil and fat in that hide was just, it was flowing out of that bear. It was big puddles. So, salt does its job. And that was great that we had salt at all. But anyway, we got that one all folded up by the time it got dark that night, and covered it in a tarp and set it back in the bushes away from the tent a little ways, and finished cleaning off the skull and got the brains out of it. We brought a little hanger wire just to, bend a little hook in the end of it and go down to the salt water.
I guess you don't have an air compressor with you, do you?
Nope. Was missing that. But yeah, so we got it all taken care of, and then the next day we spent, it was the next day after we got it back to camp in the dark. The next day we spent that afternoon and evening getting the hide taken care of and just kind of glassing from camp, and, saw some bears and whatnot. And And the day after that, so 2 days after Jason shot his bear, the wind was once again in a favorable direction. And your dad was up to shoot again. And so we decided to walk back over to the area where Jason had shot his. And we walked over there, I think it was again in the morning. And that morning, your dad, in front of the tent, there's a little area where he was shooting his bow into a sandbank. And that morning it was cold. And it had froze pretty good. It was like upper 20s that morning, which is the coldest day that we had. Everything was hard frozen, which I was just stoked for that because the hide I knew was now it's got salt and it froze last night. So that's really going to help it just set. So anyway, your dad, as we were getting our packs loaded up, and I told him, all right, let's go back over there and make the hike and go check out and see if there's anything on that carcass and go see if there's any more bears working those creeks. Because now that we know all that activity is going on over there, and there's some good visibility in some places, but it's not so big of an open area that you can't get to anything fast, So we were getting our packs ready, and I watched your dad walk over to where he was shooting his bow, and I could see him kind of fiddling with something on his bow. And then I heard a little click, 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 and I thought, all right, he's just testing his release because it's cold. And then I looked away doing something, loading up my pack, and I heard a kind of a ping, but it didn't sound right. And then I looked over at your dad, and he was kind of bent over, like holding his face. And he came walking back to camp, like holding his nose. And I said, what'd you do? And he goes, my bow went off. My release went off when I was about half drawn.
Punched himself in the face.
Punched himself right in the nose.
Ugh. Yeah,
not a good feeling. He's like, man, that hurts. And he's holding his nose and rubbing his face. He's like, I'm not bleeding, am I? No, you aren't bleeding. And I said, so what happened? I mean, did your release fail? And he goes, well, my drop away rest wasn't quite staying up, so I was kind of fiddling with that and working it a little bit because it was really cold, and then my release, sometimes it does this where it's kind of hard to reset it sometimes, and he's got a thumb button. And he said, I don't think it went off on its own. He said, I think because he had a glove on. He said, I think I must have bumped it with my glove thumb on my string hand and just set it off mid-draw and punched myself in the face. So he was, slightly above level and shot all the way out onto the low tide beach somewhere, which a couple days later, walking back into camp down the beach, I found his arrow washed up in the seaweed from the high water. And so we found his arrow eventually. Nice. But anyway, so we had that going for us. And I said, well, let's go. And so we took off and went back over there and hadn't seen any bears yet that morning, and got back over to the general area where we thought we could possibly see if there was one on the carcass, and the sun was kind of in our faces. It was off at an angle, but it was kind of a glare off the water, and we had stopped at the spot where I said, all right, let's get to here, and we can see a good amount of this end that we can't see from camp very well anyway. And let's just hang out here for a bit, maybe give it a little bit of time and see if anything moves in the morning. And I was taking off a layer because the sun was coming up. It was prepping to be a really nice day, blue sky again. But I had worn a little more layers that morning because it was cold. And now we had just walked a good ways. And so I was going to peel off a jacket. And right before I took off my pack, your dad said, there's a bear. And I pulled up my binoculars and looked where he was looking. And there was a bear over there quite a ways. And he goes, yeah, I think he's in that creek. And I said, I think he's on the carcass. And the bear was standing what looked to me like right where that carcass should be. And so I shed the layer, and then we walked over and used that same sand dune as cover and got into what ended up being like 180-ish yards was where Jason's bear died at. And we kind of looked at it for a bit, and at first, I thought it might have been that big sow that Jason and I had seen a couple days prior before Jason shot his bear earlier that day. and because it was relatively light colored, long hair, and was not a giant bear. And I said, it's an adult, it's 8 foot or more, but it's not a giant. And so I told your dad, I said, I'm not going to shoot this bear, but if you want it, then we can try to make a move on it. So we got to the spot. We were about 180 yards away, and just again with that big open area in the grass, and he was in fact laying on the dead bear carcass from Jason's bear. He had buried it like they do, buried it in mud and grass and was sleeping on it. And just the setup, I told your dad, I said, all right, if you want to shoot this bear with your bow, then if we're not going to get in the creek and move up on it, because even just getting in the creek, we would still pop up and have to cover another at least 80 yards to get into bow range for this bear. And there was no cover, and there was some grass, but not enough cover. And we were all wearing waders. I had Simms wader pants. Your dad had on the best wader pants for bow hunting, neoprenes, because they're quieter, but they're still not as quiet as you want them to be.
Right.
And man, that morning it was still. It was really, really quiet. We had the wind in our face. It was a good wind, but it wasn't a lot, and so there wasn't a lot of cover noise. There was no rain for cover noise, and just that swishing of the fabric. And
Yeah.
I said,
it would have been a couple-hour crawl.
And that's what I told your dad. I said, so in my opinion, the best way that we're going to get this bear with a bow is if we take off our waders and go barefoot in our long johns. And I told your dad, I said, it's going to take us a couple hours. I said, we're going to be doing this stalk for a couple hours, knees and elbows, sneaking up on this thing. And even then, I'm pretty doubtful that we're going to be able to crawl through that dry grass this quietly, with this quiet of a wind, and he's not just going to bust us and take off. And your dad kind of looked at it and said, I think that's a big enough bear for me. I'll shoot it with Jason's rifle. And I said, okay. So we had a conversation, and I said, look, I'm going to say the same thing that I told Jason, that I tell clients. You got to kill it with the first shot. I just reminded him, because, you get in the moment, and there's a good shot, and boom, gun goes off. And anyway, and your dad has never shot a brown bear with a rifle, and he had not been practicing for shooting a bear with a rifle. But your dad's killed plenty of stuff with a gun, and he shot his moose this year on the run. Yep. So again, I thought, all right, and obviously the closer you get, the better, especially with the backup shooter, me shooting iron sights. So we crawled hands and knees. We were able to get out of sight of it on the creek bank for probably about 40, 50 yards. And when we got out of that, we were back in sight of it, and then, he's looking away, and we'd move, and then he looks back our direction, just kind of scanning around. He was chasing every bird that came in. He was chasing the birds off. So he was kind of up and down, up and down. And at one point, he turned and looked at us and busted us at like 130 yards. And I thought, okay, well, 130 yards is a doable shot, but I'd like to get a little bit closer if we can. And, I don't think he's really spooked. He doesn't want to leave that kill. He doesn't know what we are. He can't smell us. And, because he was testing the wind, and he'd look at us. And at that point, he reoriented the way he was laying down to be facing us. And he was just looking at us. And then a bird would land, and every time a bird would land, he would turn around and, move a little bit. And so we would move a little bit more. And I think we got into about 115, 120 yards when we finally got set up. And I told your dad, all right, get, because he was behind me again. And I said, all right, get on the left side of me here. And the next time he stands up and gives us a broadside shot, you go ahead and shoot him. And the bear kept sitting up and showing us the front of the chest. I said, if it sits up tall like that again, shoot him right between the shoulders, right down the chest. And that's a good shot too. It'll probably roll him over backwards. So it didn't do that. It stopped doing that for some reason. So then your dad was now in position, really low crouched on his knees and trying to stay skinny, because he didn't want to move anymore because the bear was back onto us and he wasn't looking away now. And I figured, all right, this is a heavy rifle. Your dad is not used to holding this heavy of a gun, and he's not in a great position, so I need to get him a shot before he gets more wobbly, which I understand. That happens.
Oh, yeah.
And
we've all done it.
So I started growling at this thing, and I tried everything, and this bear would not stand up. So eventually, I mean, it was probably a minute or more that I was growling and then, blowing at it and it would look at us, and then it would kind of sit up, and then it'd lay back down and it was just watching us. And eventually I growled about as loud as I could without just yelling at it.
Yeah.
And my fear was I don't want to spook it and have it just bolt and run straight away, because then we're not going to shoot it. But I wanted to just
get him curious
enough that he stands up, that he takes enough interest. So he stood up, and as soon as he stood up, boom, and the bear kind of, looked around and shook a little bit, and I shot him again right there, and then he took off running. And I shot him on the run, and that shot went a little bit high and, ripped through the top of his back. Again, I was really missing my scope. Really missing it. And that shot...
You got to spend some time on irons to really...
Well, and those express iron sights on those guide guns, they're not for real long distances.
It's just a V-notch, right?
Yeah, well, it's got the V-notch with a little white line painted in the V-notch.
Okay, yeah.
And that big front bead. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, I shot the second time, and I kept waiting to hear your dad's gun go off again for a follow-up shot. And the bear was moving pretty quick. And right as it got to the brush line, it was boom, boom. Both the rifles went off at the exact same time. And I heard whop, whop. And I had told your dad on the stalk, I said, if he gets out of sight, point your gun in the air, and I'm going to take off running across these flats to go try to catch up to it. If I think it's hit and it's rolling over there somewhere out of sight, I want to run up on it and get close enough to see it again, and then shoot it a few more times and make sure it's not going to make it into that brush, because there was some pretty thick brush right there, as there always is. So we both hit it a couple more times, and I could see the puff of smoke come off of it, which every time I had hit Jason's bear, there was a little pillar of smoke that came out of it that was very distinguishable when my bullets were hitting it. I don't know why it does that, but every time one of those bullets hit that bear on Jason's, you can see it in the video. There's a puff of white smoke that comes flying out of that bear. So I had seen that when the bear went out of sight, and so I was hopeful that it had rolled him and that there was some ditch over there. Well, it was that creek. And I came running over there, and while I was running, I was pulling the cartridges. I had put 3 cartridges in my left hand on my rifle hand. So while I was running, I opened up my action and stuffed those other 3 back in there to load the gun back up. And when I got over there, the thing was laying belly up, on its side with its nose underneath the water, and there was just blood flowing down the river. So, all right, dead bear. And your dad came running up behind me, and I said, his nose underneath the water. I think he's a goner, but we'll just let him. If he's not, because his chest was still, giving out the last couple of heaves there. I said, nose underneath the water. Let's just let him die right there. We don't need to shoot him again. And so he died right there. And so your dad's and my last shots went through at a quartering angle, and they didn't hit very far apart. And mine exited behind the shoulder, and your dad's went in at the back of the ribs, came up, went right through the dead middle of the heart, blew a hole like that big through the center of the heart. And then I found this nozzler partition, the little front core popped out of it when I pulled the bullet out, but it came out like that from right inside the shoulder blade. And that was a great shot on your dad's part to hit it there. And he had told me, because he had the little red illuminated reticle on, even in the daytime. And he said, when I pulled the trigger the second time, I could see the red dot and I could see him running, and I just put it on the front of the shoulder and figured it would drift back some because he was moving so much. And by the time I shot, he was going to be moving. So I said, I shot, and I figured I would hit him, and he did. He made a good shot on the run there. But so I asked him, I said, why didn't you shoot again when he was running? He goes, well, I don't know. He goes, I ran the action, and I caught myself in the middle of it, but I reached out and I caught the brass, and I stuffed it in my pocket. And then you shot, and I thought, I should shoot again. So he closed the action and shot it again. And, so we had a good laugh about that. And I said, that's a first. I've never had anybody do that before. But, it ended up being, over 8 foot bore, long hair, lighter colored bear, and he was over the moon to get his bear. And he was a little bit disappointed that he didn't get to find a situation, with a bigger bear with his bow. But he said, I just figured that if I never get to do this again, at least I got to do it. And now they both want to come back. If I go back in 2 years to try to fill my tag, they both want to come back just as observers.
Yeah.
And I said, well,
we go back.
I said, in 2 years.
You go back, I come with you.
Yeah, I told them both. I said, in 2 years, Mariah's definitely going to come.
Because I had an option for this hunt, but you brought it up, and I was like, no, I can't make that. And I forgot about it until you started talking about it again.
Yeah, because as soon as you and Remington both said, I don't know if I can do it this year, I said, all right, I'm making plans. And so I went to your dad, and I said, want to go brown bear hunting? And he said, yep, and I know the third person. And so Jason and your dad went along, and I'm glad they did.
I'm glad it went the way it did.
I'm glad they did. That was an absolute riot. And anyway, we skinned out your dad's bear, and that was in the morning. So high water came up. By the time we were done skinning that bear, the tide was up real high, and we couldn't even get back to camp at all. So we just sat in the alders in a little spot out of the wind, and by that time the wind was going, and we sat there and pulled the hide out and fleshed it and turned it. And by the time we were done with the hide, the tide was out enough that we could wade back across all those high streams. And I packed that one all the way back to camp, again in that pack. And your dad put the skull in your bag and carried it, which he was much more happy with it on his back than Jason was on his. He said he loved it. He said,
He said even he got home and started comparing it to the pack that he usually uses, which is in Everly stock.
Yeah.
And he was like, I think he thinks he needs to get one now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I figured he would after he used it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had a great time with that, got it back to camp and put a bag of salt on it. And then we got the other hide back out, opened it back up, and we constructed a little tripod out of some beech logs and tied it together just so we had something to hang the hides on, and so we could get them to drip dry, and that worked out great. We had a day of sunshine for that, so we could get them to dry and get all that water out of them, which cuts a lot of weight for flying out of there. Right. So we used all the salt, and then we rubbed in that borax too, just for good measure, and they preserved great. It was awesome. 75 pounds for 2 bears is not enough, but it's enough to get you out if you're not sitting there for a week and a half and it's hot. But it was nice and cool, and we were able to keep them dry after that and keep them underneath a tarp. And so it all worked out. And just for the amount of time that we had left at that point, we only had a couple days left. And I said, now that we've been over into the honey hole, which now we call the killing fields.
Naturally.
As one does.
Yeah.
Now that we had been in that area twice and made a bunch of racket and shot 2 bears, I said, all right, I don't expect a bear that's big enough that I'm going to want to shoot to be dumb enough to come back here with all this stink. Even with the carcasses, it's going to take a couple of days before one is going to want to come around here. So anyway, I said, well, let's just take advantage of the good weather before it gets bad. And I did a 7-day forecast on the inReach, and the next 2 days were decent, and the next 7 after that were all garbage. Bad wind direction to land and horrible, heavy rain, and which means the clouds are going to impede access. And so I said, let's get out while the getting out's good. So we did, and the pilot was able to make it in there and got us out. So all's well that ends well, and they both got their bears, and it was a blast. So it was a good trip.
Yeah, I saw them both right after you guys got back, and they were
Yeah.
They were stoked.
Yeah. It was a trip of a lifetime. To be able to, it's a special thing to be able to take family.
Yeah.
And to see family and friends like that accomplish something.
And just to get to spend time with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Because your dad and I hadn't been able to spend that much time together really ever. That was the longest hunting trip that he and I'd ever done together. We'd gotten to do a few things for a few days here and there over the years, but never, 2 weeks like that. And they were just soaking it all in. And even your dad was like, yeah, I get it. And I said, you get what? And he goes, I get why you like to brown bear hunt so much. And I said, yeah, the only reason I like brown bear hunting so much is we don't have lions.
Yeah.
But there's just an element of, there was a client years ago that put it really well. He said, I think the draw of bear hunting is the euphoria of peril. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to put that. But there is a certain risk. Now, it's not as dramatized as some people make it out to be. Right. There's not a bear behind every bush, and there's not a bear every day trying to get into your tent. Stuff like that can happen,
Sometimes a polar bear might land in the middle of your tent, but
yeah, exactly.
Not there.
Yeah.
But things happen.
And early on in the trip, we did have a young sow that did not know any better come walking right up on us on another spot that we were at, just kind of glassing and overlooking an area, and it popped out and walked into like 30 yards of us, downwind, and just saw us and came walking over to investigate. And it wasn't being aggressive, but, I grabbed my rifle because it was close enough.
Yeah, naturally.
I hollered at it or something by the time it got into 30 yards. Because it's like, all right, enough's enough. You've got all this beach to run to, and you don't need to pick to come here. But there, it was just curious, and it probably didn't even know what we were. I'm sure it didn't. But yeah, it's not as dangerous as we would like to make it out sometimes to be, just because that's kind of fun. But it was fun, and brown bear hunting is a gas, and they're hard to put down when they're that fat, and they just, even in the springtime, they can soak up a punishment. It's fun to shoot them once, and then the game is on, and you shoot them until they're stopping, and until they stop moving. And it's not because they're not dead with the first shot; they just don't know it yet. It's more about, you want them to die where you want them to die.
Right.
I want to stop them from getting into the brush, because skinning a bear out,
or the water.
Yeah, or the water. Which thankfully your dad's only died in about 6 inches of water, so we could roll it out of there, and we could roll your dad's bear. But had Jason's died in the water, we would have been doing a lot of work in the water.
Hey, remember me to tell you about something you might find a use for in those types of situations that I saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will remind you.
We can talk about it another time, maybe, if you like it, but what it looks like.
Yeah.
But, well, you guys got back, and you're texting me pictures. Mm-hmm. And a day or two before that, a friend of mine, and I'd been up at his house trying to get a boiler going. He's building a house. He's just trying to get the boiler going so he can heat the place and keep working on it here in Fairbanks. And he's texting me pictures. Mm-hmm. And I just get, all of a sudden, I've got like 10 texts from him, like, what in the world? I'm pulling my phone out, and it's just picture after picture. He was down in Southeast shooting deer. And one of them, he's just like sitting back holding this deer in his arms like it's a dog on his lap, with his hand up under the head with his arm on its back with his doe that he shot. And and he shot like 3 does in 2 days, like nice sized does for the meat. And he did one of the charters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He said it was pretty nice. He said, you got the fish. They were shooting ducks. He said, meals were cooked for him. They had a chef on board, cooked for him every day. And I didn't ask him how many deer. I was in the middle of something when I ran into him when he got back, and talked to him for a second. But I have to ask him some more questions about that, if he got any nice bucks or anything. But I saw that, and he started texting me those pictures, and I started planning a deer hunt. Even though we're not going to do one this year, right?
Yeah, spoiler alert. We're going to miss deer camp this year. There's too much going on.
We got to get my dad out there.
Yeah.
He would have an absolute kick of a time.
That would be fun.
But
yeah, we'll have to go twice next year.
Or just do a long...
We did get a question that kind of goes along with this episode that I figured it was worth just a quick mention, and we'll give an answer for it. Let me go to it here. Play the elevator music. We got a comment/question. The All Sheep Pack Dump episode was great. Same with the Caliber Selection episode. Finally, a hunting podcast that isn't done by fuddy old gun writers saying they need a Magnum caliber for Alaska, bears, elk, and moose. Would love some rifle setup episodes or how to hunt Alaska episodes. So we are working on that. We do have some more content along those lines coming. But for the question at hand, obviously you can see
nice sling.
See my super expensive rifle sling here. This is the rifle that I took brown bear hunting this year in the backup capacity. This is a 375 Ruger. This started out as the Ruger guide gun with the green laminate stock, and I bought the Hogue rubber overmold stock with the aluminum pillar bedding in it. And the gun is unloaded. I'm not going to close the action for YouTube reasons, but it's a 20-inch barrel. This gun does come with a muzzle brake on there, and you can see that it screws on right here, just like that. I'm not going to take it off, again, YouTube reasons, but right now I don't have the brake on there. I haven't had it on there for a very long time. It's way too loud. I did guide with it the first year that I brought this gun brown bear guiding. I did have the brake on there, and my ears are two permanent reasons of ringing as to why I'll never do that again. So I they do come with a barrel balancer, they call it. It's the same weight, supposedly, as the brake, and so it's not supposed to change point of impact between brake or no brake. It did change a little bit, but whatever. It's zeroed to shoot as it is, figured currently. But I left the balancer on there, not just the short thread cap, just because, in theory, it sounds good to me anyway. It keeps it this much farther, keeps the noise that much farther away from my head when it goes off.
Just get a little bit more velocity.
That's not why I did it, but sure. And it also is a little bit more protected from the barrel itself. Keeps, if I do have the electrical tape blown off of it, I did retape it after I cleaned it for some reason. I need to take that back off of there. But anyway, I do like this gun. It is probably my favorite rifle configured for a guide gun. It's short. It's relatively light for what it is, although it has enough mass weight to it that it does absorb a bit of the recoil. I think that the rubberized stock probably helps a bit with that too. I've heard some theories about that. But yeah, I hate the Hogue stock as far as aesthetics go compared to other more trim, slimline stock profiles. But I've gotten used to it at this point. I've carried it long enough. And I like the rubberized stock because it's totally weatherproof. And I can hold on to this thing if it's covered in Johnson baby oil. You like that one, dude?
Yeah.
Or in the real world, red rubber fishing gloves when it's soaking wet.
Right. Or bear blood.
Yeah, when it's covered in slime and fat and your hands are dirty and slimy, I can still hold on to this thing. The texture is always there. It doesn't matter if it's wet. I can still get a grip on this thing and shoot it. It does hold 3 in the magazine from the factory configuration. I think this winter I'm going to purchase the Alaska Arms floor plate extension for the magazine. He makes a magazine for these and an extended floor plate.
Oh, nice.
That adds, I think it's 1 extra round.
Is it in stainless or blued or?
I don't recall, actually.
I'm just curious.
I don't
Seeing
remember.
as I have a blued.
Yeah, I know. I think the ones I've seen are black colored. I don't know if they're Cerakoted or nitrided or if they're just blued steel. I don't know. I'll have to ask. He also makes quick detach rings for the guide guns. I know several guys that have them, and they say they're awesome. They repeat to 0. I wouldn't say that I need those necessarily, but I am
nice to have,
interested
yeah.
in adding at least another round to the magazine capacity. It's just nice. Jason's 375, his CZ 550, carries 5 in the magazine. They don't make that CZ anymore, but it is a control round feed rifle. But I do like that feature about his gun. It carries 5 in the mag. Excuse me. But most 375s, especially in the Ruger lineup, just carry 3. And in this Ruger guide gun, they make these in 30-06, 300 Win Mag, 338 Win Mag, 375 Ruger, and 416 Ruger. And I got this one quite a while ago. I think about 7 or 8 years ago at this point. But I've carried it a lot. It is stainless steel. It does pretty well for what it is in the saltwater conditions. That's where it spent most of its time. But it's just a good working guide gun. It's overall, it's hard to beat this from a factory gun. I think it's a very practical choice. It's not $2,000, which is another plus. It's a relatively speaking for the market. It's pretty affordable for what you're getting out of it. It's not fancy, but it works.
So you missed your scope. What glass would you recommend?
On this gun, I've run 2 different scopes. I started out with the Leupold VX3i 2.5 to 8 power.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a 36 millimeter objective or 30 something anyway. It's not a very big scope. It's pretty light. It's a 1-inch main tube diameter. And then I've also had on there the VX3i 1.5 to 5. I think it's a 20 millimeter.
Yeah, it's a 20. I have one of those.
Objective as well. That's the real straight pencil scope. And that one works fine too. Neither one of those have illuminated reticles in there. This spring I carried my Model 70 that has the red or green illuminated reticle. Trijicon 1 to 8 power scope. And I like that scope, and I would love to put it on that 375 Ruger, but it's a 34 millimeter main body. And Ruger does not make 34 millimeter rings, and nobody does that go direct to that Ruger receiver. And the adapter plate systems that I have tried just don't end up working out very well for that gun. So I only run either 1-inch or 30 millimeter scopes on that gun. So, but yeah, either one of those, the 1.5 to 5 or the 2.5 to 8, is just fine on that gun. So, but again, and that was with the 270 grain shock hammer that Moe and I loaded up together a couple of years ago now, and I've shot a handful of bears with them now, guiding and in backup rolls, and they work. That's the first one I've recovered from a brown bear. Every other one has zipped through, and I always find the shank exit, and then around it within a few inches I find where the petals have poked out as well. Which is pretty impressive that those little petals can make it all the way through after they detach. Yeah,
because they detach in the first few inches. Yeah,
so this particular bullet model, the 270 grain shock hammer, has a little bit thicker petals, so they don't peel off as fast. They do.
It's a half a second instead of a quarter of a second.
Yeah, so that,
I mean, the difference is very small, but it makes a big difference in what it does and how it performs.
Yeah.
But the difference is just, like, it's still just under the hide that they're coming apart.
So when I was talking to Steve about which one I wanted to use for brown bear guiding, he said that if you're looking for one that holds on to the pedals a bit longer, get that one, because they built this one specifically for use for water buffalo originally, because they wanted it to stay together to get through a thicker hide. So, more for buffalo application. So I said, on a raking shot, going one end to the other, I'd like it to stay together a little bit longer. Brown bears are not hard. Really, any bear is not hard to shoot through with a premium bullet. Realistically, anything will work if you get a good broadside shot. But for the most part, when I'm shooting, it's a running shot, and a lot of the times they're running away, and so I'm just looking to get shots into the body, whatever angle I'm getting. So I'm looking for maximum penetration, because I'm not ever getting a good broadside lung shot if I'm shooting. So that bullet has worked out great, and I've zipped them through lengthwise on some good sized bears, and they work just fine. So I've been happy with it, but that is one gun there. I figured we would just mention it and talk about it just briefly.
Yeah.
Outdoor Life just did a good video about that gun too.
Okay.
Tyler was talking about it quite a bit. So that there's a decent amount of information out there about it.
I'll have to throw I did this with my sheep punt dump. I'll have to throw maybe do a clip. Just a video
just of the rifle and bullet selection. Yeah.
Of your rifle bit there, or of the rifle bit. And I say, because how does that compare to my African? Because I have the Ruger Hawkeye African.
Yeah.
In the 375 Ruger.
Yeah. So the African model is just blued steel with a wood stock.
With a walnut stock, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Nice looking walnut stock. It's got the traditional red Ruger recoil pad on there, so it has the aesthetics of it, right? So that rifle was more designed with Africa in mind. You're in a drier climate. You're not really worried about
more open
corrosion.
Environments. It's a 23-inch barrel.
Yeah, 23-inch barrel versus a 20-inch barrel, but it still has the same thread options on there. You can run a brake or a balancer or just a thread cap. It has the same iron sights.
Do you have to buy those parts after?
They come with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have those for mine. But I didn't buy it new.
Okay, yeah. I don't recall if we can find those or not.
But
If we can't, then we can get them online.
Okay, yeah.
Probably direct from Ruger, I would imagine. But anyway, yeah. So that's if I could only guide brown bears with one rifle that I currently have, that would be it. Just the compact nature of it, and it's shooting fast enough that you can easily shoot a few hundred yards with it if you need to. It's not. It's not a big sacrifice in velocity, whereas the 375 H&H with 300 grain bullets, especially with factory ammo, I've seen 375 H&H factory ammo, 300 grain bullets that are only going about 2,400 feet a second. That's pretty slow for what you could be getting out of that cartridge. You can shoot a 300 grain bullet even out of an H&H at 2,550, possibly even closer to 2,600. But I have preferred shooting the 270 grain class bullets because I get a little bit more velocity out of it, which can be your friend on backup shots. Because again, if they're running away,
especially when you're not planning on any distance shot, distance except for necessity, your goal and your whole point of having that gun is for close up.
Yeah, and the 30 grain lighter bullet to me for as much velocity as you gain is worth the balancing point. And that is a very popular bullet weight up here with a lot of guys that shoot 375s for backup guns, is to shoot a 270 grain class bullet. That does very well in 375. So
we've got that going 27,
2725 or 2730, somewhere in there.
At like 50 degrees?
Yeah.
Or was that a little warmer?
Somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, it shoots great. Shoots awesome. I brought the nickel-plated brass.
That's right.
Loaded ones.
The pretty ones.
For this, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you have the guide rifle, which is perfect for everything, for guiding.
Yeah.
And the Hawkeye African that I have is more for somebody who's wants a picture. Not specifically. It is made for Africa and everything, but it's a prettier gun. I may go on. Maybe I'll go on a dozen brown bear hunts in the rest of my, here in Alaska, or maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. Maybe I'll only ever go on one, or maybe it'll never happen. But it's. I'm not taking it guiding.
Yeah.
And so it does fit. Yeah. It didn't bother me that much when the opportunity came up to purchase it. It was a good deal.
Yeah.
From a buddy of ours, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm just going to do it. I don't have a 375. I should do it.
Yeah, and it's a great choice.
And I'll probably take it moose hunting.
The CZ that Jason brought is a wood stock blued gun, and he just oiled it down, cleaned it off every day, and just put a little bit of gun oil on it, and it did fine.
Yeah,
you just take care of it, and it's fine.
And don't scrape your stock against the rocks, and you'll be good.
Yeah, just don't bash it around. But
I feel like if I take that rifle on a bear hunt, I'll leave the walnut stock on it for the pictures, and then if I take that gun moose hunting, I'll put a hogue stock on it.
Yeah, covered in mud.
I just can't. Well, yeah, but inevitably on a moose hunt, you're on a wheeler.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just beat the crap out of your guns. And I mean, I have a pretty laminated. It was a pretty laminated stock on my 4570.
Was, yeah.
And it is scratched to pieces. I mean, I could refinish it and it'd be fine.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that hard to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just, especially when you're carrying it on your back or you're, when you're going into bear baits with it and stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and you can get it Cerakoted black, so it doesn't change the aesthetic of the steel too much.
But it's not blued then.
Doesn't have that gloss.
Yeah,
to
so
it.
maybe I'll just have to buy another rifle.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, folks. This has been fun to recount the bear stories, and that was a great trip. And we'll undoubtedly we'll have a bunch more stories to tell here coming up. We have a few guest interviews in the queue coming up for you. So now that we're getting into wintertime, we'll get on to different shenanigans, and we will do more along that listener comment question. So with that, if you like the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and a positive written review. We would appreciate it very much. That was where that comment/question came from, was from the Apple reviews and comments, and so we appreciate that. That helps drive traffic. The show continues to grow, and we appreciate that from all of you. So if you like it, share it with a friend and give it 5 stars and leave us a comment. We would appreciate it and help grow the show. So until next time, tread lightly, but don't tread well.